This was something that I saw yesterday, I believe it was, and there was the conversation. If you're on Twitter, if you're on COD Twitter specifically, you probably saw this as well. But the conversation was around the promotion or lack thereof of champs by Activision or the CDL in general, which I thought, you know, I thought to myself, but again, like I'm not going to put it out there and say why isn't the CDL promoting champs because it's like the end of the season. I just kind of think that's how it's been for the last few years. So I'm not really too bothered by it. I've come to accept that and to expect it. But I think Ben Nissim, his tweet was the one that kind of kickstarted it off. He said, "We are about 9 days from champs, and there has been virtually no marketing push from the league to promote the event. Happened last year too, and they got bailed out because Optic both ran a great event plus made a deep run." He followed up by saying the league in 6 years has yet to effectively maximize its marketing potential during both preseason and postseason windows. Plenty of things they can do that don't require a lot of money. Need a full-on rethink for next season. And I think I saw another tweet where he said like they obviously care about the CDL or something like that. And I believe it was Bance that fired back and said they obviously do not care about the CDL. But I want to get your thoughts on this, Bink, because this and some other things related to the advertising and the promotion of the league has been something we've talked about for a while now, and that it feels like the stepchild that has been kind of ignored by Activision and now Microsoft. What do you think about the promotion or lack thereof of CDL Champs 2025?
Yeah, I mean that's been something we've talked about. Really, I mean there have been multiple decent sized breaks, I would say, over the 5ish years of the CDL era, and I feel like that's kind of just been something that's happened and never truly been addressed over all these years. It's just like, you know, if you follow the CDL closely, you know that there's a break going on and you have an idea of when stuff is going to happen again. But if you're just a more casual fan and you don't like really know what's going on, then there's a chance that you might fly under the radar and you miss something. And that's one of my friends, Rule. Shout out Rule, message last night, and he was like, yeah, I just I didn't even, I had to check to see if champs had already happened because I didn't know what was going on. And um I feel like that's a sentiment that again, like people like you and me and other uh people who follow the CDL very closely are like, yeah, it's just par for the course at this point. But for other people, it's like, they could think the season's just done and dusted and there's nothing going on. So, definitely an issue, especially when it's champs we're talking about, right? Like if this happens, like, they do their yearly break for the winter holidays, and that's during the online matches. That is what it is. There's no real way to avoid that, in my opinion. Even if like we've talked about it before with like doing the season earlier, even if they did it in November, they would inevitably take some form of a break for the holidays. That just makes sense. So um but when we're talking about champs, like that's the marquee event on the calendar, and that's like it's your Super Bowl, your World Series, your NBA Finals, however you want to phrase it or compare it to other sports like that. That's what you're that's the big deal, and that's what we're doing this for, right? So definitely a kind of puzzling, in situation here where like you have this time and space to do whatever you really want to do in terms of marketing, and um the seeming the seemingly the choice right now is just like they aren't doing anything. And I can definitely see why that would be frustrating. I feel like it'd be more frustrating to um the teams themselves, or the people actually competing and owning a spot in the league and whatnot, because that's where it would affect them in terms of like advertising and getting fans the viewership, getting people excited for the tournament and whatnot. But yeah, definitely a bit of a head scratcher.
So I found the comment that I had seen on Twitter. Someone said in response to Ben, because they don't care. And Ben responded, said, see the stupid ass comment too often. If they didn't care, we wouldn't have a league and they wouldn't fund a single esport competition with their IP. Clearly, they care enough to invest millions each season to make this happen. Could they do a better job? Yeah. And then Bance replied to that, said, you're an idiot if you can sit there and say they care. They do the bare minimum to make it a tax write off of being a marketing tool for their game. That's all it is. And then he responded to another Ben tweet, said, I don't think. He was saying a tax write-off. I don't think it was to begin with, but definitely over the years, it's become one they've fully given up and just now give the bare minimum to keep it going, which I think is undoubtedly true. I would look at you sideways if you tried to argue that they have not, completely stripped it down to, pretty much the basic parts and have done very little to try to build it back up. Obviously, we're in quote unquote the esports winter and all that. And so I get that there is a financial element at play, but I've also made this point numerous times on the show, and not just in relation to the CDL specifically, but these are some really, really rich and powerful people that are involved in the CDL, or that kind of fund the CDL. If they want to make this a success and they want it to be a big deal, then they will spend the money because they already have that. Sometimes it's not about making money in the short term, it's about making money in the long term, and neglecting the CDL in the way that I can't even say it's like leadership, because it's not the guys that are running the league ops, right? It's not those people that I have a problem with. It's the higher ups in Activision and Microsoft that they do not care about this thing. Like they could use it as a marketing tool much more effectively, and we've talked about it before. You could base reveals around this league. You can base seasons around this to hopefully show off and showcase what you have in your game every single year, but they don't do that. So I don't really understand um, I don't understand their marketing strategy, if there even is one, or if it's just we think this could be valuable at some point. We think esports could be valuable again at some point. So let's just keep it alive as long as we can without really putting all that much effort or all that much money into it. Um, I just don't. I don't know what the solution is. Like the old saying is, to make money you got to spend money, basically, and they don't spend the money. So it's on a grander scale, kind of what we saw with the Paris Legion and the Vegas Legion, where yeah, you can just be there for the ride and to hopefully get your money back or something, but to be like one of the big orgs, to kind of have the success that I'm sure a lot of these organizations would envision, you have to spend the money and you have to take the risk. And I don't think the CDL is willing to do that. We saw it with the Overwatch League. Like they just let it die. They just said, let's pull our money out, and something else can start in its place. I would not be surprised if something similar happened with the CDL. Obviously, we got that statement put out. What was that, after last season, where they basically said there's a commitment for whatever it was, 2 years, 3 years. And they laid out some ground rules for what they're looking to do over those next 2 to 3 years. I have not seen really any change in the CDL this season from previous seasons, and you can correct me if you believe that I'm wrong about that. Obviously, the format has altered a little bit with the minor coming into play, which I think is something that should happen. I think there should be more event-based games and matches, because that's probably if you are going to bring in an audience on a consistent basis. I don't know if a regular season game is really going to do it. You probably do need tournaments and something with stakes. So a minor or multiple minors could help that. But yeah, I have a hard time believing that the way that the CDL is operating right now is anything but just doing the bare minimum and hoping that it doesn't really affect the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, unless you got more on that too, sort of as a segue, I think just as a interesting conversation, the Toronto Ultra are seemingly hosting some sort of $10,000 tournament this weekend. Um, the only promotional material that I saw was the tweet, and then Breaking Point tweeted it, and it says 3 CDL teams, 13 challengers teams. So I'm not entirely sure who the CDL teams are. My guess is that it would be 3 of the 4 teams that aren't at champs, because as we've known historically, like, the CDL doesn't like the whole off season full CDL team tournaments. They allow those tournaments where it's like half of your team playing with another half of the CDL team or whatever. That's another entire conversation there. But, as a segue, like, this is something that could have been, again, if they're not allowing full CDL rosters at champs, I don't know how it would have been possible over this break. But, like, something like this happening last week or even the week before as sort of like a tune-up, especially with the position some of these teams are in. A team like Vancouver jumps to mind, who we've talked about over these weeks, have those 2 grand finals appearances and then come in last at Major Four. That's the last time we've gotten to see them. So, even avid fans like ourselves don't really truly know what kind of form they're coming into champs in. A tournament like this, although, again, well, like you're saying, like, might be lower stakes, might, the amount of passion, for lack of a better term, or how hard some of these teams are going, that would always be debated. But inevitably it would have given an opportunity for, like, the Vancouver team to be like, okay, we can showcase what we're capable of again. Or it would have just been another opportunity for us to see them in action, and if they struggle, it's like, okay, maybe we have to be a little more concerned about Vancouver heading into champs, as opposed to the position we're in now, just being completely blind to what Vancouver is going to look like at champs. I know that's just one example, and this tournament is, it's a good thing it's happening. But that really got me thinking about some of these other things they could have been, the league could be doing in this time to try and set the stage for champs. I mean, even, again, not a great example, but, something that always pops up and when people are talking about, like, filling the gap and whatnot, is, like, World Series of Warzone stuff. And obviously when Scump won that, like, the whatever,
The
I think it
YOLO thing.
was, yeah. I don't remember when that happened, but, like, that's another, like, they could do something similar to like that, where it's just during this time we get the 32 players that are playing in champs into one Warzone lobby, who can do the best. I mean, even they would never do it to promote another game, obviously, but, like, if we got those players to, play Fortnite or something, like, at least get the players together. That's not a really good example because that doesn't help. But I know I saw tweets of, it feels like a lot of people, and I know Zuma and Scrap and Hydra and Dashy, they've been playing Counter-Strike a little bit on stream over the recent weeks. I even saw, like, I think it was Scrap and Dashy did a chess Chall. I saw a Breaking Point tweet of. So it's like, there's been this gap to fill in this break period, and it's just not being taken advantage of. And I do think, for what it's worth, that this Toronto Ultra thing is cool. I don't know all the details and everything. Will be interesting to see which 3 CDL teams are actually playing along with what the challengers teams are. But end of the day, like, that has been something we've talked about. Even if they did want to do tournaments, some sort of tournaments, like even an S&D tournament on a Friday night, like last week, to try and, like, build a little momentum. There's been that, like, unwritten rule of, like, no full CDL teams can compete together in non-CDL events or whatever. That would seemingly be an issue. And really it's a double-edged sword, because, like, we're talking about, like, the Toronto Ultra in this case, like Kason, and in the offseason and stuff. There are people who want to seemingly help the CDL promote its game and its league, and then these unwritten rules that we hear about but are never actually confirmed, like, they get in the league's own way. So it's a bit of a conundrum, that's for sure.
Shout out Ismail in the YouTube chat. He said, I got a feeling Optic is going to surprise a lot of people, and we will definitely be talking about Optic a little bit later on when we get to Legacy talk. The three teams that are competing, just according to like who they tagged in the photo,
Oh,
is LAG, Vegas, and Minnesota. So yeah, three
okay.
of the four teams that did not make champs, C9 being the notable exception as the only team not to go to champs and not to play in this tournament. So yeah, it's like I'm they should have. I don't know what the logistics are or anything. Maybe they were waiting for confirmation from one or more teams about like whether they were actually going to participate. But announcing something 3 days before the start of a tournament is not great. Even if it is just a small tournament, like it's not like an official thing. It's just kind of their own separate event or online event. But yeah, it's not great. I would also say, just in general, and we've talked about this, and I suggested it before. Why is the CDL not organizing S&D events? Why is the CDL not organizing hardpoint, eights almost? Why are they not taking initiative to bring together these players outside of official matches and spotlight their not only their talent but their personalities? This is something that every other professional sports league in the entire world has figured out is it is very good to have entertaining personalities within your league that people kind of gravitate to, that they end up watching the matches that they're involved in because they have this affinity for them. And yes, there is a certain level of that with Optic in particular, and to a lesser extent LAT and FaZe and maybe a few other individual players. But tell me what you know about Gwen. Tell me what you know about Snoopy. Tell me what you know about name insert player that hasn't been around for 5 years. What do we know about them? We don't know much because the CDL has done basically no like day in the life or docu style uh content about these players, at least recently, and shown you this is Snoopy's backstory. This is why you should root for him. This is why he is so good. Tell me about last season and how bad it was, and then how great this season has been in comparison. None of that has happened at the CDL level. Maybe individual teams have done similar things, but to put the onus on the teams themselves when you know that many of them, I don't want to say all of them, but many of them have kind of followed suit with the CDL and have said, hey, we're not going to put as much effort, as many resources. We're going to scale back our content team. Sometimes even the esports competition side of it, we're not going to have as many coaches or analysts. And so they've dialed it back. It just leads to this happening where Champs is, a week away now, basically, and there has been little to no promotion about it. I haven't seen a YouTube ad. I haven't seen anything of the sorts. Of course, like on Twitter, you might see the CDL tweet, hey, Champs is in 9 days. Here's the schedule or whatever. But even the CDL Twitter can't get hyped up about the biggest event of the season happening. And that's unfathomable for what we know about professional sports. The NBA has gotten into hot water very recently and is still in hot water from its fan base and some media members because they believe that the NBA hasn't been promoting the finals and making it as important or seem as important as it really is and giving it the pomp and circumstance and the respect that it probably deserves. The CDL is obviously on a much, much smaller scale. It's dwarfed by the NBA or the NFL, but they should be learning from these professional sports leagues and the mistakes that they're making or they have made in the past and say, hey, like they had 60 years, 70 years to learn from this, and now we're going to do something creative and smart with our marketing, and that just hasn't come to pass. And I'm completely baffled as to why that is, other than it's just not an important thing to care about in the CDL or in Activision and Microsoft. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts on this topic, because it is something that I think we both could probably rant on for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, you really like you brought up a good point with the docu-series stuff. That used to be cool, and not. I mean, obviously, it's a little different for you and me when we used to write about these guys. But I mean, there was a time where like apathy, I could, Brian. I don't know how to say his last name,
Yeah,
Zelyakov or whatever. I used to be able to spell that without even looking it up. It's a long last name. It's got some, obviously starts with a Z, and so it's a weird one. I couldn't do it now, but 2018, 2017 Bink could spell that without even having to double check it. And now, like you mentioned, Gwen, rookie of the year last year. I know his first name's Isaiah. That's it. I don't even know where he's from. I think he might be from like Indiana or somewhere in the Midwest
no clue.
potentially. But what did you say?
I said no clue. I don't
Yeah,
know
I have no idea.
anything about him really.
And I know the Snoopy story. I'm pretty sure he was like discovered. I say that lightly. I'm pretty sure Censor obviously um, was one of the guys who like gave him his first chance. Obviously last year, um, and I think the year before at the end of that year, because yeah, that's when he like played at Champs. Would have been 2 years ago. I think Censor started playing with him in like Challengers or whatever. Um, and I believe he's from Mexico or of Mexican descent, I believe. And um, that's like all I know about Snoopy too. And it's like, yeah, you bring up a good point there, and just that lack of material. Obviously, you really like Snoopy, so to a lesser degree, but Gwen is a prime, like literally rookie of the year last year, and neither of us can tell you his last name or where he's from. I think that speaks enough in itself to lack of promotion of the players, and in turn lack of marketing and advertising for the league and champs overall.
I could be wrong. I think Gwen's last name might be Gwen. I
Oh.
that might be it, but I am not. I'm looking it up just to. Yeah, it is Gwen. So like,
Okay.
so but again, like I've I remember when I was coming up in Call of Duty, and obviously you've been around Call of Duty longer than me, and you know players or know about players that I don't really remember or I vaguely have knowledge of. But the players that were in Black Ops 2 and Ghosts, I could rattle off like the first and last names of these players a lot of times. And I knew, for example, Scump was from Pennsylvania, and that he was in high school. And like, I remember watching those videos of him and like how he went back home and then he came to the Optic House. Obviously, like, those are extreme examples because Optic is the biggest team. Scump, at least when Nadeshot was playing, Scump was the second biggest or second most popular player, and then eventually became the most popular player when Nadeshot retired. So like, those are extreme examples, but I knew that Slasher went to college for, I think, like computer engineering or robotics or something like that in California. I knew a lot of the fun facts about these players and kind of like their general upbringing, even if it wasn't as detailed, because we had those videos. We had these kind of introspective pieces about who this player was and what makes them tick. And I know, like, we're probably getting super granular and super bogged down. And people will say, well, it's just an esports, just people playing video games. We're like, every sport is just people playing a child's game. Like, that's literally all it is. And it's just, people throwing a ball around, kicking a ball around, people shooting a ball into a net. Like, it's all kind of silly when you get down to it. But if you don't take it seriously, or if the people running the leagues, they don't take it seriously, they don't care enough about it, then why should anybody else? Why should people pay their hard-earned money to go to an event, for example, go to Champs in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, and spend their money on a ticket, spend money on concessions, spend money to buy a jersey, spend money to do anything at these events? Why should people even tune into a free live stream if they don't care about it? And the CDL has to do a better job. They likely won't, because I've said this and everybody basically has said this, that they should be doing better. And we've been saying that for several years now, and they haven't done any better. In fact, they've probably gotten a lot worse, and kind of ignored the CDL even more. I mean, the fact that we don't even have a pause feature, we don't have these kind of fixed tools. We've had broken Codcaster for the entire season. Like, that shows that even at a developer's level, this is not a priority, and it's likely not going to change overnight. It's probably not going to change at all in general. So I don't know whether we should get used to that, whether people should, band together to change that, if there is any way to change that. But that's kind of where we are right now, with the state of Call of Duty. And I think the sad part about it is, and this will be my last point, is that once the games start, it's all fun again. And champs will come around, and we'll be talking about it. We'll be raving about it. Like, oh my God, can't you believe this happened? This was an incredible match. These are incredible moments. And it's just a shame that not as many people are watching as they should be. Not as many people care as much as they should, or could, if the proper care and the proper time was taken to promote this effectively. And but that's where we are right now with Call of Duty esports.